Hey guys, I just wanted to create a video to share with you a little bit about why travel is actually a challenging thing and a big decision for us with my body specifically. So, one, flying in a plane is just challenging for my system in general. I mean, it's challenging for anybody's system, but particularly for my lungs. There's a couple of risks. The biggest two being one, bleeding from my lungs, which I've discussed in a video before about that, but the pressure changes can make that more apt to happen. So if I have been bleeding close to when I leave, many times we wouldn't go just because it's a bigger risk. And that has to do with the air pressure and the change and the up and down. So especially if there's more than one leg to the flight. So if I have to go up and down more than one time, each time I go up and down, there's a chance that the lungs can be affected and that I could have a bleed. And that can be dangerous, especially if you're on a plane and don't have access to medical care if it's needed. So that's one thing. The other thing is that we all know there's increased chance of germs and catching things when we fly in a plane, and that's especially dangerous for my lungs. Like I've shared before, if I even get a cold, that's something that could end up putting me in the hospital. So it's just air travel in general is a big risk. So lately, the past number of years, we've tried to do more travel by car or really limit the amount of air travel specifically I do. The other thing I touched on when I was talking about meds in air travel is that it is always kind of a scary experience going through security because you never quite know what you're going to get. If you're going to get somebody who's going to question every single med, and you know, some of them will say you can't take this, like if there's something in a liquid form, which I have many things in a liquid form. There's getting my nebulizer machine on the plane, and sometimes it's easy peasy. Sometimes they let you through, no issue at all, but I always have personal anxiety coming up to security, and I always feel great when we've finally gotten through, and fortunately for us, this last time was an easier way through. So, and then going through customs, there's a whole nother level of dealing with meds, and especially getting back into the United States, actually, that can be tricky. So there's all of that, plus just the general, like, it's taxing on the body to travel, again, for anybody's body, but my body is already dealing with a number of things, you know, just trying to live and survive on its own. But now in this additional medical treatment, which we sort of hinted at that I'm in an increased medical treatment for MAC, which could be another video, I'm on a number of antibiotics. It's sometimes 3, sometimes 4 a day, and so my body just feels kind of ugh, in general. So you add that to flight travel and all the stuff that happens with the stomach and nausea and stuff like that, and it's challenging. So it's a big decision for us to actually fly, or to actually say yes that we will travel. The other piece there is that we always have to get the insurance because we never quite know what my body will be doing when it comes time to actually launch ourselves. So yeah, sometimes, many times, most times, we don't know until even a day or two before whether we're actually going to venture to get me on a plane. So that's a big piece. So what do I do to prepare for this, or what do I do to support myself in this? So the one thing is what I just said, we always get the insurance, so we know we have that as a backup plan. 2, I try and always make sure I have some kind of cushion when first arriving somewhere, which isn't always easy, especially if we're supposed to do things with guests or friends or family, but I try and ensure that I don't have to jump right into something when I arrive somewhere, and I try and also keep a cushion. I need a couple of days when I get home. So for example, a 4-day trip for me actually means, you know, like 5 or 6 or 7 if you're adding in the buffer days, and sometimes unfortunately I need a lot more on the recuperation end when I get home, but hopefully that won't be the case this time because we're doing a lot of resting and relaxing while we're here. The other thing is it also matters what kind of trip we're taking. Like if we're taking a trip where I can rest and relax and we just have the time that's more restorative, obviously that makes a big difference too, versus being in a situation where we're traveling and just kind of going or being more on. The other thing is just, so when I'm on vacation, I don't get a vacation for my meds. So really making sure that I have that schedule. Even when we don't have a schedule, I have a schedule. So it's, you know, making sure I have either alarm set or things to make sure I can keep my meds on track. And I try and be as loose and free about that as I can, because I want to live life, and I want to live fully and not be restrained. But you know, I also want to support this body to do the best it can while I'm here and for the rest of my life. So it's definitely a balancing act for sure. So I think that's, you know, most of it. There's obviously always the unknown possibility. Oh, the other thing that's really challenging with travel is that I have started to not be able to sleep very well, and especially when I'm in a different bed. And that's been super challenging, particularly with travel, because my body then, not having sleep is like an Achilles heel for me. My lung function drops. Yeah, it's harder for me to breathe when I don't sleep. It's just, everything's harder in general, especially now that you've added in the extra medications. So I have all sorts of tricks that I try and I use while we travel. You know, melatonin is a huge one, but meditation techniques, like all of these things. And again, I try and set up a supportive environment for that, which isn't always possible when we travel. So that's tricky. So I just do my best to prepare for all of that, and to also try and let go of all of that and not have expectation. So it's tricky, but it is worth it to be able to still, you know, seize this part of life. So for us in particular with this trip, our friend Shauna, who is a childhood friend, she had asked us about coming on this trip, I don't know, last spring or something. I think it was like last May, and we just weren't sure what was happening with the move, what was happening with my body, what would be happening with treatment at that point. We were still in such unknown territory. But we, you know, said we just don't know what we can do, but sort of kept it in the back of our minds as a possibility. And of course we wanted to say yes, but we just weren't sure yet. So then, you know, fast forward, we moved, we're back in the hospital figuring out treatments, all these things, and we had talked about it a couple of times and honestly thought, you know, it's probably not something we can do. But actually Rick was encouraging and continuing to look at the possibilities, and so this past time when I was in the hospital, we actually had, it was our first time in the hospital, like totally on our own out in Denver, and we had some scary things happen. So one of which was that I got a blood clot in and around my PICC line, and you know, we weren't sure if I was going to have a port put in at that point or have one put in my neck. It was really actually pretty scary, and Rick was with me, and there was a point where we were just sitting down on the little couch / chair thing that was in my room, and I could tell that like he was definitely being affected by what was going on too, and I just kind of sat with him and we just held each other really. And then there was a point where he just kind of looked up and said, I am just picturing you on the beach in the sun. And I just knew, like, at that point, we just said, we're gonna do it. We're gonna go for it and see what's possible, and we'll buy the insurance and we'll just figure it out. And at that point, we didn't actually know if I was gonna be in MAC treatment or not yet. We thought maybe, but it just felt really important to us. I mean, we've had this long stretch of really intense time, and we wanted to be here with our friend to celebrate her 40th, but we also decided that it would be our gifts to ourselves to take this adventure and come to the ocean for our 40ths too, and in celebration of life. And we were gonna do what we could to really go for it. And also, like I said, get that insurance and just you know, be prepared for anything, but to plan on leaving and going. So we just kept moving forward as if, you know, each day. And I did have a conversation with my doctors, and she said, you know, as long as I stay kind of near the ocean and don't go inland in more of a jungle-ish tropical climate where MAC might be more prevalent, that you know, we had her blessing in going for it and just seeing what happened. So we did, and here we are, and I'm so glad. It's been a really beautiful time, and I'm definitely looking forward to relaxing more and drinking in Mother Ocean and sand and sun and being with my beloved, and yeah, just celebrating the fact that we can, you know, it is possible, and that just sometimes you go for it and it works out, and sometimes you go for it and it doesn't, but there's still something really special about going for it anyway. So here we are in this beauty. It's pretty incredible, and I'm definitely very, 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 very grateful and aware that, you know, not everybody can make this happen or do this, but everybody has their own version of something that they can do and can try to expand into. So just holding that for every being, really, as we're here in our own celebration. So thanks for watching, and we'll share more soon.